All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about a case that is just absolutely infamous. It's one of the most heartbreaking, most talked about crimes of the entire 20th century. A case that completely captivated a nation, stumped the police, and earned its name almost immediately: the crime of the century. Okay, I want you to picture this. Just try to put yourself there. There's a little boy, he's not even 2 years old, sleeping peacefully in his crib. His dad? He's a global hero, maybe one of the most famous people on the planet. Their home is supposed to be this safe haven, a fortress. And then, just like that, he's gone. In the middle of the night, from his own room. No one heard a thing. You walk in, and the crib is just empty. The silence in that house must have been deafening. The only sign that anyone was ever there? A single piece of paper left on the windowsill. And it's a ransom note, demanding a staggering amount of cash if they ever want to see their son alive again. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some straightforward kidnapping for money. No. The real horror of this story, the part that truly shocked everyone to their core, was an ending so much worse than anyone could have possibly prepared for. All right, let's break down how this all started. The date is March 1st, 1932. The place? The rural home of none other than the world-famous pilot Charles Lindbergh in Hopewell, New Jersey. This is where the whole nightmare kicks off. So, think about how fast this all happened. At 9 p.m., everything's fine. The baby, Charles Lindbergh Jr., is tucked into bed on the second floor. Just 1 hour later, at 10 p.m., the nanny, Betty Gow, goes to check on him. And the crib is empty. Can you imagine that panic? They start searching frantically, and it only takes a few minutes for them to spot that note. The clues at the scene told a really scary story. I mean, you've got these muddy footprints all over the nursery floor, and then you look outside and there's this rickety, homemade-looking wooden ladder propped right up against the house, leading directly to the baby's window. It's clear someone didn't use a key. They broke in from the outside. And what were they demanding? $50,000. Now, you gotta remember, this is the height of the Great Depression. That's an absolutely insane amount of money for the time. The message couldn't have been clearer. Get us the money, or you lose your son. So, of course, with their son's life hanging in the balance, the Lindberghs were willing to do literally anything. And that brings us to the next chapter of this awful story: the secret, desperate scramble to pay the ransom. Now, the Lindberghs weren't doing this all on their own. This guy, a retired school teacher named John Condon, actually volunteered to be the middleman. He's the one communicating with the kidnapper, using codes in newspaper ads, and eventually, he's the one who has to meet this shadowy figure in a cemetery to make the drop. So the money is paid, the 50 grand is handed over, the whole family, the whole country is just holding its breath, waiting. And then, the ultimate betrayal. The kidnapper had given them this tip, said the baby was on a boat called the Nellie. But it was all a sick, cruel lie. There was no boat, there was no child. Just gone. And so was the money. Every last bit of hope that the family, and really the entire country, was clinging to was about to be completely and totally destroyed. So, think about it. The money's gone, the lead was a fake. Where was the baby? What happened to him? The silence after that failed ransom drop must have been absolutely agonizing. The answer finally came on May 12th, over 2 months after the kidnapping. And it was just the absolute worst case scenario. A truck driver just happens to pull over on the side of the road, not far from the Lindbergh's house, and he finds something. It's the body of a toddler. And soon, the confirmation comes, it was him. So just like that, this case transforms. It's no longer a kidnapping, it's a murder investigation. But the trail was ice cold. The kidnapper, the money, both had vanished. How in the world were they going to find the killer now? And justice did not come quickly. Not at all. After they found the body, the case just stopped. For 2 years. 2 whole years, police were just spinning their wheels, chasing down bad tips, hitting one dead end after another. It really started to feel like they might never catch the person who did this. And then, finally, in September of 1934, the break they needed came from the most random place you can imagine: a gas station. An attendant gets paid with one of the gold certificates from the ransom money. He thought it looked kind of funny, so on a whim, he wrote down the guy's license plate number. And that one small action, it led the police right to the doorstep of a German carpenter named Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Okay, so now they have a suspect in custody and the media just explodes. It was an absolute circus. The papers immediately started calling it the trial of the century, and believe me, the entire world was glued to this story. And the evidence the prosecution brought against him seemed pretty overwhelming. First off, they search his garage, and what do they find? Over $14,000 of the ransom money, just stashed away. Then, handwriting experts get on the stand and say, yep, his writing is a match for the ransom notes. And then, the real clincher. And this was some amazing forensic work for the time. They took a piece of wood from the ladder and matched it to a missing floorboard in Hauptmann's attic. A perfect match. Hauptmann insisted he was innocent. He maintained that right up to the very end. But the jury, they didn't buy it. They found him guilty of murder. And after his appeals ran out, he was executed in the electric chair on April 3rd, 1936. But, just because someone was convicted and executed, that doesn't mean the story is over. Not by a long shot. The legacy of this case is so much bigger, and it left a scar on the American psyche that's still there today. And this is where it all gets messy, and where people still argue about it today. The official story? Hauptmann was the lone wolf. He did it all himself. Case closed. But there have always been doubts. Big ones. Was he really alone? People wonder about accomplices. And was the evidence, a lot of it circumstantial, really enough to send a man to his death? There are folks who think if we could test the evidence with modern DNA tech, the story might change completely. One thing that isn't up for debate, though, is how this case changed the law. The public was so horrified, so outraged, that Congress passed something called the Federal Kidnapping Act. We all know it as the Lindbergh Law. It's what made kidnapping a federal crime for the first time, which gave the FBI the power to chase these criminals across state lines, something they couldn't do before. So, you have a child stolen from his bed, an entire country left traumatized, and American laws changed forever because of it. Officially, the books are closed on this one, but it still leaves you with this one final, really haunting question, doesn't it? After all this time, after the trial, the execution, the endless debate, can we really truly say we know everything that happened in the crime of the century?